Welcome to Before You Build, where we talk all build and design. And I'm Ariana Anderson.
And I'm Brandon Holland, the Senior Sales Manager for ARIID Build and Remodel. I build it, she designs it,
Yes,
and we're
yes.
going to get into it.
Yeah, so today's going to be a really fun topic, I think. A lot of people ask is questions about cost. How much does things cost? I think that's like a big hot button for everyone who's going to even think about designing or building or both, or like you kind of need both, but whatever you start, right? So
Yeah.
I think why don't you dive in, Brandon? I think this is
Yeah.
your sales. This is really your topic. I'll be here on the back seat, right?
Oh, thanks. Let me talk about the
Yeah.
money. I appreciate it. No, so many people are afraid to talk about the money, and so they don't have the money conversation on the front end. And the thing that catches homeowners off guard, it isn't the design or the timeline. It's really the money and how it works for the project, and what the actual budget looks like
Mhm.
as you move through the process.
Same from like design side. I think that's also a conversation that I think takes some people by surprise, like who haven't really hired an architect and a designer, or a firm that has both services. Like for example, what we offer, um, they're surprised in the amount of hours it actually takes to create something beautiful. But besides also beautiful, something that's practical.
Right.
So how do we help our clients and our viewers like be really ready for that when they, knock on any door or explore that stage of getting things designed to be built. And then we'll talk
Yeah.
about build, right? Because
Yeah, no, and yeah, let's break it down.
yeah, let's do that.
We're not going to sugarcoat it. Let's get into the nitty gritty, and we're actually going to talk about the hard part of the money conversation that just doesn't happen on the front end.
A lot of people ask us like, what should I plan for when I design a luxury kitchen or like a kitchen, right? What should be my budget? That
Yeah.
really is one thing that you hear.
Oh
So how do
yeah,
you address that?
yeah. I mean, it could vary widely. It's you figure 150 to 350K for most kitchens, and it's going to vary slightly depending on what choices you make. But at least that gets you some sort of ballpark, gets you close.
So yeah, I mean that's so true. So like that's one thing. And then what if a client comes in like with 100K, right? And it's like, hey, sometimes we get lower number, but when they go, I have $100,000, like how do we help them? Where does that budget land? Like we're mainly doing designs for state of Washington, King County area, but we also do other states.
Right.
But the budget for design is kind of the same thing for like very close to build. So how do we break that down?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard conversation to have because, with a budget of 100K, if you're doing a small powder room or something like that, you can really be imaginative and do something extravagant. But to do a kitchen for 100K, it's
Yeah.
not realistic. It's um, very few and far between, that you actually get a budget of 100K for a kitchen remodel, and usually the clients end up, recognizing they need to bring more money to the table.
100%.
Um,
Yeah, and I think there's a rule. There's a 30-40-20 rule, right? Like
right,
so there's like 30% is cabinetry, you have 40% construction and labor,
right.
and then you have 20% is going to be maybe the fixtures and all the other things, and then 10% contingency. So if we take that whole budget, right, and 70 we put aside 30. So if we're at 100 thousand, then what does that leave us for cabinets,
Well,
right? So
right,
like
yeah.
that's
30,000 for cabinets isn't a lot.
yeah.
Maybe if it's a really small kitchen and you're not looking to expand it, you don't want an island. A small L-shaped kitchen, you might be able to do that with semi-custom, but it'd be really tough.
Yeah, and then you have cabinets, you have then
Yeah,
slab, right? You add some material.
yeah.
So bathrooms. People always underestimate those. I mean, that's you probably see that all the time. Why don't you
Yeah,
talk to me
yeah,
about
so,
that?
I mean, with bathrooms, they are a little bit sneaky because when you first look at them, it's a small space, there's
Right.
not a lot to them, but when you actually break it down, by line item, you start to see, there's a lot of, waterproofing material,
Mhm.
tile finishes, your vanities, with the countertop. I mean, you're talking about building a little mini kitchen almost, by
Yep.
the time you're all done, so, I think those definitely are the biggest surprise, for most clients when they first get into the process of looking at a renovation.
So why don't you talk to me about budget? So like, yeah, that's like, but let's put some numbers. Like, and these some of these budgets that we're talking about, these are like national numbers. So like they could be off from area
Yeah.
to area, but like roughly, what would be a luxury primary bathroom?
Yes, I mean, so you're looking at 75 to 175K, and then also, I mean, there's some additional expenses because, if you're moving plumbing even just a few feet,
Hmm.
plumbing doesn't care if it's moving 3 feet or 10 feet.
Right.
It's going to cost you quite a bit of money that you might not have already in your budget when you start the project. So having that information up front, speaking with your design team and working through that process, so that you're going to have an extra 10 to $15,000 just in moving the plumbing around the bathroom so that you get the flow that you want and have your fixtures where you want them.
Yeah, plumbing, then don't forget electrical too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun. Hidden cost with, that can really blow the budget. So
Yeah.
like what are those like we have to pay attention
Yeah.
because
They
before you know it,
they add up.
oopsie daisies,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, steel I-beams, a lot of times when you're trying to open up a floor plan, it actually requires a steel I-beam. There isn't a
Mhm.
glue lamp strong enough to get you a 25-foot span and support a second floor, if you have bearing walls above.
Right.
So
And if you
there's
do go with wood, which is a little bit less cost, then what happens is the beam starts to grow in height. So
yeah,
like then you're dealing sometimes 20-inch to 24-inch just in the beam.
right.
And those are like if it's the right aesthetic for a home, that will look so beautiful. But if you're remodeling, a lot of times we're kind of stuck with the ceiling height,
Mhm.
and that becomes like a problem.
Yeah, because that 24 inches starts to grow
But
down into your floor below. I mean,
right. Right. And
yeah.
and there's ways of doing that in getting the beam partially up into the floor joist.
Mhm.
But again, those are the things. Like if you need the heights and you're going with steel beam, that could hurt the
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah, another thing though that blows the budget is, your electrical system. The panel
Mhm.
upgrades.
Oh, yeah.
Almost every panel needs to be upgraded, even before you start adding things to the system.
Yeah.
A lot of panels that were put in, even 30 years ago, they're just undersized for what the home needs, and now we're putting them, under more strain by adding electronics to them,
Yeah.
and then we're trying to add saunas, in our homes sometimes. Appliances, two sets of washers and dryer. I mean, those things all, cause a strain on your electrical system, and so, that expense can be pretty
Yeah.
significant.
Yep. Another thing that's another hidden cost, but also can be a hidden cost is timing. Because like there is a thing, right? Do you want to have it fast? Do you want to have it cheap?
Yeah,
Do you want to have quality? Like,
you can choose any two, right? It's
right,
it's the
only
old
two.
triangle, the engineer's triangle. You can pick any two, but
Right.
yeah.
So like another thing that could hurt cost if it's not really managed properly is going to be like time. So we
Mhm,
have cabinet time. It does take 12 to 16 weeks to get the cabinets. It's just, that. So like planning that in advance. And then also like where is your material coming? Like your tile. Is it coming from Europe? Well, let's add, few more weeks to that,
yeah,
probably 8 to
some
10
yep,
to be safe, because delays cost money. That's kind of the other thing. So like being
absolutely,
efficient, I think that's a big thing. Making sure like did you get a team that will be there for you
right.
for that? That's really cool.
Yeah, and anticipating those lead times, knowing that, you have to start sooner to make sure those things are on site by the
A
time you actually
hundred
get to the
percent,
work portion.
100. Before you like do demo,
Right,
you want to make sure that you're ready, have all those things placed. So again, it's having a good team. Are they placing things? I mean, that's kind of how you know.
yeah, proper planning makes a
Right.
huge difference
Do
for
do you have a
sure.
timeline for things?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So there's another thing is like the biggest surprise. Like, can you share it with us? Like, what is the biggest surprise that you had mid project? So,
Yeah.
like, you are there, like, you have experience of 25 years. You've seen everything. So
Right.
you're there.
Yeah, I
Tell
mean,
tell us a story.
yeah, for me, I mean, I always try to anticipate these things, and just sometimes you get surprised and you're just blown away. All you can do is laugh at the end of the project. It's an unnecessary evil, but at the we can't do a project and leave the customer in an unsafe condition. And
Hmm.
this particular project over in Factoria, we were supposed to just do cosmetic changes. They wanted to pull the lid down in the basement floor,
Hmm.
so that they could put insulation in. They wanted to turn the downstairs area into a mother-in-law suite, but they wanted to have some sound isolation. So as we started to pull the drywall off the ceiling, we discovered some electrical that had been done in a way that, I mean, to this day, I still have never seen it done like this before. But they had literally just twisted the wires together. The junctions were not in a box; they
Oh,
were just free floating in the middle of the joist, and no wire nuts, just electrical tape around them to hold them in place. And that is a huge fire hazard. So once we uncovered one, we started digging into it and found that essentially the entire electrical system of the house, every bit of wire had to be replaced because we just couldn't trust that it was only the ceiling
hmm.
that had this defect in it. And lo and behold, we tore all the sheetrock off, got it down to the studs, and all the wiring was done in that way. So
Ouch.
it's amazing that house didn't burn down. It was quite the expense. I think it was about $45,000 all said and
Just like
done.
surprise, right?
Yeah, that wasn't
Unexpected.
accounted for. But again,
Hmm.
that's not something that we should anticipate in those situations. It's a one-off event, but for the most part, we're pretty good about recognizing where those expenses are going to come up throughout the project.
100%.
So How do allowances, this is something I see a lot of contractors doing now. They're producing bids very early on in the process before
Mhm.
selections are made. And to me, that seems reckless and
Yeah.
irresponsible because you don't have enough information to really give a client a budget. And so they're using allowances for their material costs rather than having them select prior. So, uh, how do you think allowances set people up for failure?
Yeah. Well, allowance. Who wants allowance, right? But, allowance is like if you have, let's say, $5,000 for tile, like even if it's a small bathroom
Right,
and you do the math per square footage, like you might be 20 something dollars a square foot for tile and then you're done. So if you want something specific, then it's going to be change order and upgrade.
right,
And that is kind of something that we don't personally like to do. It's starting, getting those bids. And when we see people come to our office and they have, here's a bid that our contractor gave,
right,
right? And that has quote unquote allowances for things and they haven't selected anything. They don't even have an idea what
right.
things cost. Then that project could easily double
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and then you don't know.
And I see it as a way, that, contractors are artificially deflating
Mhm.
the overall, project cost because they know that you're not gonna find that, $6 a square foot, backsplash
Oh
tile.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Right.
so they put that number in there because then when you look at the overall budget that they provide you, it looks low.
Yeah.
Well, then, by the time you select your tile, it's increased, 3 or fourfold,
Right.
and compound that over the rest of the project and the other materials that you
Hmm.
select, and all of a sudden, you recognize that, you know, they didn't do anything to make the project more expensive.
Right.
All they did was made it more appealing on the front end because, they make it up in change orders. And that's one thing that we avoid. We try not to issue change orders unless we absolutely have to. And
Mhm.
that's typically because the client has made a major decision, to alter the
Yeah, or
original
add and
plan or
actually not even alter. A lot of times we see it's more like add-ons, like, "Hey, I want you
right.
to do something else now too."
Yeah,
So like you're doing our kitchen, I want to do the bathroom. So that
fair.
is, that does extend the order. But that's just so true because if you go in low, that's
Yeah,
that's something else that people who haven't really done this before need to really never select a low bid offer from a contractor that looks really appealing,
right.
because you could just you should multiply it by two right
Yeah,
away.
and really, I mean, if you have an outlier where someone is extremely low
Mhm.
compared to the other 2 or 3, that should be a red flag, not a
Yeah.
green flag. So,
Yep.
just make sure you do your due diligence, in vetting your contractors.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah,
So this one is gonna be fun. So like we're in 2026 right now,
right.
and we've seen over the years, or even like fluctuation in price, right? Let's talk about
Even just in the last couple months,
right.
with, these fuel surcharges,
Oh yeah.
that we're starting to see come across, delivering these materials isn't cheap, getting them, trucked across country, the fuel costs, have definitely impacted that, and so we're seeing 10 and 15% increases passed
Yeah.
on to us, from our
Suppliers, yeah.
suppliers.
So we've been actually receiving emails that like starting next month there will be 15% increase for fuel charge. And sometimes like with these ups and downs in economy, and we've seen that during COVID, we had wood shortage and we had water
Right.
shortage, maybe not water shortage, but it did went down after a while. But it's like some things that you're in mid project and it's like, what do you wait?
Right. Yeah,
So
no,
yes,
it's
that's something else to account for. Then when you start, a lot of these projects are not 3 months turnaround time,
right.
really. Like if you take account all the materials, everything that needs to get to the site, so you might need to anticipate that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's why you're seeing a lot of bids, bids used to be good for 60 to 90 days, and then
uh,
it kinda back down to 30. Now you're seeing 14 to 30 day,
yeah,
times where it's having a bid only good for 14 days doesn't give you a lot of time to make a decision, so, making sure you're working with the right person,
yeah,
on the front end will definitely, help truncate that schedule for you.
yeah. And if you have a good set of plans, you have a good set of selections, and then I mean, but it's part of like evolving with the project.
Mm.
But at least you have a good backing that you can alter, and I think that also cuts into some other things that we want to talk
Well,
about
yeah,
is like where on what should you spend and on what you should save.
yeah, so I mean, countertops.
Yeah.
What would you spend or save on countertops?
Countertops probably spend.
Yeah.
I would totally spend on that. Yeah, I would. I would. Because it's one thing that you see if you pick beautiful stone, if you pick beautiful quartz, it's going to look stunning 20 years, 30 years. So it's
Yeah,
like
it's timeless, right?
it is.
Yeah.
It is for sure. That for
Yeah.
sure. And I think that's kind of cool with the budgets, right? Coming back, it's like I think that's something that I always want to reassure our clients is like, even when we have a budget, things could change. But if we are in the mindset of like, where can we save? Where can we spend?
Right.
And instead of having a specific allocated amount for A, we can have that flexibility to move funds
Yeah.
around. Then we can create something cool.
Yeah, because
Even
maybe you can save money on cabinetry, going with the
yeah,
semi-custom option,
yeah, some
where,
stuff.
it's
Or
considerably less expensive.
yeah, and there's some gorgeous like for our vanities instead of doing a custom vanity. There's just so much suppliers that we have that create beautiful, beautiful vanities, and they have all the flutings and just gorgeous. So like,
Mhm.
and that would save on a cost. What's another fun one?
Yeah, so, I mean, ventilation's a big one. I mean,
Yeah,
you see this all the time. People spend, 15, 16 grand on, a range, and then they go with a $800 hood, and it's
that
just
doesn't. Yeah.
yeah.
Or like I just did a video talking about microwaves, right? It's like it came with a house, being there, and that's kind of like yes, you see it. It's right at your eye level. So like the hood, I would actually spend more money on the hood. I mean, I like
Yeah.
beautiful ranges, but like sure, it's a range.
Yeah, and for me, it's like you're talking about beauty. For me, the practicality of it, I wanna make sure that there's enough draw and, that's actually circulating enough air to do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah,
S
doing those calculations is super
Yeah,
super important.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, this one, on lighting. That's another
Yeah,
question I get.
this was a heated one. We both,
Heated, right? Yeah, it's lighting. Hopefully it's heated.
yeah.
Otherwise we'll be in trouble. But lighting, like
Yeah,
people come to me, it's like, hey, maybe I want to find a fixture somewhere on, Amazon, 3.99. No, but like uh, that's a big thing. It's like, do you spend more money on light fixtures or do you spend, plans? That's another question. It's like
yeah,
where do you allocate that? And I think where for us what comes down to is like plans. You have to have good plans. If you have a good team that's gonna provide. It's gonna cost them the same amount of time to draw them
right,
good or bad plans. So like that amount shouldn't change. So on that you should save. I'll put it in the save
right,
category because if you have a good team, you will have good lighting layouts. But I would definitely spend more on light fixtures. Although that might be not everyone would agree with me on
right,
that one. And I think why light fixtures are super important is they are actually like you will not really notice as much like door handles also because you touch them, but it's like it's big. It has
yeah,
presence. So if you have a gorgeous chandelier, you cannot not see it.
right. Yeah, no, and I think, light fixtures and plumbing fixtures are very similar. Like, if you make the right choice, you're gonna end up with a timeless option that is gonna, far outlive, a lot of your remodel. 15, 20 years later, those features are actually gonna be desirable still.
I agree. I
Yeah,
agree. Even like when you walk in into a beautiful, nice hotel and it's didn't have a renovation for 50 years, the fixtures are like wow, and the detail of the stone. It's like I love staying at classic hotels that they're actually
yeah,
built well because
yeah,
they just have so much character, and it's like it still is exciting. 50 years later and
yeah,
looks gorgeous.
absolutely.
So, Brandon, question for you. Would you spend or save on flooring?
Well, this is where I am I have mixed feelings because I would spend on durability, but I'm not gonna focus as much on, the design trends on the flooring. I think that, for me personally, for a lot of the people that we work with, durability is important, especially if you have pets, you have kids, you're gonna be entertaining. That's something that I think you definitely need to, focus on, but you don't wanna completely abandon the design element of it, and
Thank you.
because
I
it's
was I was like holding my breath. I'm like, are you really going down that rabbit hole? Like, we need to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, flooring.
Yeah,
And I think where flooring comes back to is like having that classic feel. So
yeah,
like herringbone right now is like really popular, but herringbone is beautiful. Like even if it's an older home, it
right.
just has so much character. It is a bit more to install. It is a bit more on the product, but that is something like you said. It's durable.
Yep.
So carpet or floors or hardwood floors, definitely hardwood floors.
Yeah, no carpet for me. I mean, I know that there are some areas where it makes sense, but I'm pretty hard fast in my, or steadfast in my love for hardwood floors.
Good. Well, we're aligned on that.
Yeah,
I like
perfect.
that.
There's
I like
something.
that. So, question to you, Brendan. Before you hire, if you were a client, let's put
Yeah.
yourself in the client's shoes. Before you hire, what would be three questions or what would be three things you're looking for in a contractor design build firm?
Yeah, I mean, so first, I want to interview people that have actually been through the experience that I'm about to enter into, and I want to speak to the most three recent because that's going to be a good representation of the current crews that they have, the current subs they're using, and where they're at. And so I think that's going to give you the most honest view
Hmm.
of how they're going to perform on your project. If you just go for like the three best projects or the three biggest projects, yeah, you're going to be speaking to people that were cherry picked potentially. So
Yeah, I mean, sure. That's totally in
yeah,
alignment. Yes, and like, I think what I like to tell to our clients, like, well, if we're going to be doing a build, design and build for you, like, we are going to be in engagement for a long time.
Right.
So we better like each other. We better, it's something that you want. When you call, the phone call will be picked up. When you
Absolutely.
email, there is more than one person responding because sometimes you have like one man crew or a smaller team, and it's very difficult to get hold of someone,
Mhm.
especially when the project is like halfway through or getting to the end. That's where things become very painful. So, like, having that responsive team, I think is
Yeah,
super, super important. They'll be there, so
absolutely.
that's huge.
Yeah, so the other thing, I mean, I'd ask them how do they handle change orders? Just you need some clarity there,
Yeah.
because change order process is very important, and it's the one area where I feel like the client is a little bit exposed and can get taken advantage of,
Mhm.
and so just making sure you understand the process and that it's, written out clearly in the contract,
Yeah.
so that you have a way to hold them accountable.
Yeah, and there's a reason why, contractors, or GC, it is something because you do contract and other subs. A lot of times there's very few firms that would have an electrician on staff, that will have plumber on staff, that will have your foundation, usually there's a lot of subbing, and
Yep.
I think it's more, this is where people get in trouble. I think the most is when they're trying to do the project by themselves.
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, what is it so hard to hire a plumber?" And it's like but when you're managing and you don't understand the contract that you're signing with them, that's where, like, when you have a good contractor, they can actually protect you from all those change
Right.
orders. I mean, how many of our clients we would say, "No, you're finishing the job and you're not
Yep.
charging us anymore." And it's a fist fight. It's
Yep.
a very, I don't think people realize how difficult construction
Yeah,
is.
and that's why I mean, for us, I mean, our greatest strategy is making sure that we have good working relationships with the subs that we use,
Yeah.
and then, we treat our subs very well,
Mhm.
and they come back to us.
Yeah.
We're not cycling through subs, on every project and
Mhm.
just trying to get the lowest, bid out of each one.
Yeah.
We're
100%.
keeping them accountable, making sure that they're, competitive with the market, and we're, getting a good product from them without having to, fight tooth and nail sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if we get a sour apple,
Yeah.
that sour gets home, it gets sent home
They
for
exist. Yep,
sure.
they
Yeah, they
exist.
don't stick on the project. No,
Yeah.
we don't. We want good people and we want quality. I think that's the biggest thing, is like quality and getting that done.
Yeah. And then the third question is, I mean, what's your timeline?
Oh, yeah.
I don't want a contractor that's available to start next week.
Yes.
That's a red flag for me. So I'd like to know, what projects are you currently working on,
Yeah.
wrapping up, and when would you be available to start mine?
Right. And having a good, yes, that's, timelines are huge. So then it doesn't, you don't just get on a wait list somewhere. You get a demo, like we had, we had one client, right? Um, yeah, who hired a different contractor, and we were just doing the design portion. And before we even finished the design, the contractor, and it was before we opened the entire group and had our own construction division, but she was pushing, and it was a female GC, was pushing so much for demo. We need
Right.
a
Yeah.
demo permit.
Yeah.
Like that demo permit, she was like, so we turned one around really fast. She gutted the whole place, and 2 years later, it still is gutted.
And the sad thing about that house, it was very livable. It
Yeah.
was very nice.
It was
And
okay, it was
yeah.
not bad. It had character, but, like, everything got gutted, and those are the biggest things that, like, to look for really, is, like, when the person you're trying to hire is so eager to start demo before materials are ordered,
Yeah.
before you have permits.
Yeah, demo goes fast.
Yeah,
People don't understand, like, and then it's kind of funny because it catches them on the other side of it, where you start a project, and as soon as demo starts, they see all this progress,
and then everyone
in the
gets
span of a couple
excited.
days, they're all excited, like, oh, we're going to be done in two
Yeah,
weeks.
and then it's like, and then crickets for 6
Yeah,
months.
yeah. So
Uh,
why would you want to start that early?
yeah.
Yeah, you're setting yourself up
No,
for
no, no,
failure.
yeah, so, like, that's a big red flag.
So, what should clients ask their designer when they're interviewing them?
That's a good question. So I think not I think, I know for sure. The biggest thing is understanding how your project is going to be walked through from beginning to the end. So if they cannot paint a clear picture, so if they come in and they don't have a timeline, if they don't have steps and phases, they don't know what they're doing. That's the bottom line. So you should you should have a timeline. You should understand what steps are being done to achieve it. And I think the biggest thing too is like having that clarity. And I think that's what underlying topic of this whole thing, and budgets and so forth, is understanding and having clarity. So if there's clarity, like my husband says, clarity is kindness. So if you can see that, then that would make sense. But there's steps. And if you have, you have schematic design development, you have construction documents, the whole thing, and if it's scheduled properly, what will save budgets is redesigning. Just like if you start building without proper drawings, you will have to rebuild and tear
Right.
things that you just built. We've seen it.
I've done
It
it.
happens,
Yep.
yeah. So the same thing for design. If you're hiring a team or a person who has those clarity steps, you will not be in a position when you are in your construction documents going back and redesigning your kitchen. And that builds on top of each other, and that's the best way, and that's the only way to be time efficient
Right.
and get fast design and submittals. And I think the same thing really applies to build too. Is having that a good planning for how the construction is going to go.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, don't you agree with that?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, for me, it makes a huge difference when the design is done well and it's actually done thoroughly in a way where I don't have to guess at what I'm supposed to do in any one given area. The nice thing is, if I have a question, I can just reach out to you. But typically when I get plans from our team,
Yeah. Well, we
it's
have a lot of conversations. We talk
uh,
about our clients every day.
every
So,
day.
yep,
Yeah,
every day. So, hopefully, this helped in understanding a bit more about cost. And if you have additional questions, click the links below to contact Brandon to reach out to our team. We would love to sit down and have a conversation with you about what you should do and help you really understand and navigate this exciting but also scary process. And it doesn't have to be scary if you have the right person by your side. So hopefully this helps. Thank you so much. And until our next episode.
till the next one.
All right.
Thank you.